This is a lyric for a song that I wrote in the early 90s, possibly the late 80s, when I was beginning to transition from living in Nashville to returning home to Madison County, North Carolina, to marry Leesa. And I used to drive I-40 a lot, back and forth, even before Leesa and I reunited. And around Crossville, Tennessee, there is Genesis Road. And I would see that exit sign repeatedly. And I had a notebook at the time that I kept mostly just titles in, and I wrote it down and carried it around with me. And then once the transition was beginning back to North Carolina, I wrote this song that my band that I had in Nashville did and recorded, and was very happy with it. So this is Genesis Road. We ran the Genesis Road. We ran it hard and fast, living every day like the last, no questions asked. With the love of the open-hearted, a love that knew no shame, we staked our claim, and Eden it was named. But something came creeping into the garden, whispering to my soul, telling me there was a bigger world than that woman in that lonely road. But it's the same sky here, painted blue and white, sequenced traffic lights, sequenced day to night. I see a lonesome star, I see a tear-stained moon, and far away somewhere those two also shine on you. Baby, leave your window and find a picture of the days when things were clear. The smiling face beside you there is somber, distanced from you here. In the beginning we had it all, same sad story that's always been told. Rose of Eden, I hear you call, calling me back down the Genesis Road. There are deeper rhythms in life than these driving my reckless pace, and this mechanical human race is losing touch with grace. You are a dancer in love, with the native rhythms I have left, the rise and fall of your breast, the beat of life itself. Baby, set that rhythm as a beacon I can feel and follow home. I've left my winding way unmarked, and there's no returning on my own. In the beginning, we had it all. Same sad story that's always been told. Rose of Eden, I hear you call, calling me back down the Genesis Road.
You're listening to Books on the Bed, where I travel through the country asking our hosts, if I came to your town and stayed at your house, what books would you put on my bed? Each host will share 6 books for me to carry with me on the journey of my life. And I'm here to share those books with you. As we go, we're building a digital library with every book put on every bed across the country. And who knows, maybe someday, the world. We are trying to share as many diverse stories as possible to part a curtain between us and bring us closer to each other. We hope these books and conversations make a meaningful difference in your life. Thank you for listening and being with us on this journey. God, I love that. You have a great reading voice. It's very soothing to listen to.
Thank you.
And it's fun to have you, hearing you read from your novel, but now hearing the lyrics. Yeah. I can understand what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, it flows really well for a song just read.
Yeah. And there was a time in Nashville that I decided that I would never write a song that I couldn't read like that. Now, that probably backed me into corners that kept me from being widely recorded. But it was something that I was committed to and stuck with.
Well, the reason I chose this, and I probably give too much context for listeners, but I don't care. It's my podcast, so I can do what I want. But so I was with Nick Brown, who's a professor of English at Clemson. Very similar life story to you and Pete McDade.
Okay.
And in fact, Pete bought Nick's memoir, Bang Bang Crash, when he was at City Lights a few months ago, and then actually hit up Nick Brown because they had so much in common. So Pete was in a band that was signed. Right. Nick got signed by Atlantic Records. Mm-hmm.
I think that's who Pete's band was with for a while.
Out of high school from Greensboro. A band called Athenium. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
I know.
Anyway, he was 18, living out his dream, and he just quit.
Yeah.
And he accidentally got back into Columbia University because his deferral didn't lapse in the system from when he was accepted out of high school. Mm-hmm. Then he ends up going there, majoring in English, going to Iowa for the writer's workshop, and then becoming a writer and has all these novels. And he did Bang Bang Crash, which is a memoir about reflecting on beginning as a drummer. And he's really struggled to talk about his life as a musician. Mm-hmm. He wanted to bury it. Right. So he was trying to figure out with this memoir why, and like, how could I open up that part of me again so that I can accept, like, this is a huge part of my life. You know, I was a drummer before I was anything else, truly. Mm-hmm. But in our interview a couple weeks ago in Clemson, I had him read about a chapter with his daughter because they experienced this eclipse. And it was this moment where he realized, like, man, her life's going to go by so fast in our house, you know, like, I want to hold on to this. And he kind of came to the realization, you know, I could have lost, you know, I lost drumming and it was fine. I could lose writing and I could be something else. Right? But the one thing that's most important is my daughter, you know, and my family and who I am outside of these things that you think are really important, and they are. Mm-hmm. But just knowing about the little I know about your relationship with Leesa, it had that same power to it. Where you're like, wow, she's the connective thread through so much of this, dating back to your journals, like reading some of the off comments you said about thinking about Leesa. And I really love your love story and what you did, leaving songwriting behind and recreating your life. Those are the types of people I want to sit down and talk to. Yeah. I love when people can just say, you know what, I can be something else somewhere else, whether it's a return home or somewhere new. And I just thought Genesis Road kind of captured that. Like, once you cross that line again, when you were done with Nashville, you had a new life. Yeah. And then you became a writer and an English professor. And anyway, I love that.
Yeah. And, you know, it was difficult for her because, you know, once we got back together, let's say it must have been autumn of 88 when we reconnected, and then we got married in autumn of, or late summer of 89. She married kind of like a music man. And unfortunately, when I left Nashville, I left music behind for a good while, probably a decade at least.
Wow. Okay.
And I didn't listen to it. I mean, I kept writing after, you know, so the last song I wrote was probably in 93 or so, you know, for a long time. And I'm sure she wasn't expecting to ride around in the car with no radio on, nothing. And so it was, I think it was, I mean, we did great, but I think it was something different than what she expected when she married the guy who was in the band. You know.
Yeah, I love, and I take a lot of comfort. You know, I'm 34. I have no idea where my life's going to go.
Yeah.
And when I see all of these models, like so many of you writers that have lived these several lives in one, it makes me feel like, you know what? Just go with it. Yeah. You never know. You can always start over. You can have a new beginning, and it's not going to be easy necessarily, but you can do it, and it can be rewarding, and it can open up all these new doors. Right. And sometimes you just got to go with your heart. And I think, like, what if you hadn't left music? Then we wouldn't have your books. Mm-hmm. And I've loved reading your books.
Thank you.
I didn't know what to expect when I first started reading, which I started with Streets of Nashville because of your event at City Lights. Yeah. But then going back, I was like, wow, I love how it's all connected. It feels harmonious, all of the stories, whether it's a novel or short stories. I didn't get through all of your Charles Brockton Brown book.
You read that?
But that came from your dissertation in 2000, which I was desperately searching for. And some universities allow anyone to get online dissertations, but yours is a still physical copy in the library.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I couldn't get it. But then I was like, oh, but was it turned into a book? Because sometimes that happens.
And it was.
And here we are, 2004.
Yeah.
One of the resident experts on Charles Brockton Brown. So I just really enjoyed getting to know you. And now, again, sitting with you, because I think you've had a really brilliant and beautiful life.
Yeah, it's been good.
And I'm just glad to be connected with you.
Right.
So, as you know, I thank everybody with gifts.
I have heard.
For giving me the gifts of your books and coming to City Lights and just sharing your music and your writing with the world, man. It's great. So the least I could do.
Okay.
Now I will say with these two, I thought about adding Nick's Bang Bang Crash as a third, and now I'm regretting that I didn't, because I want you to be friends as well. But there were two that stuck out the most.
Okay.
And why don't you open that one
Open these
first?
on air?
Oh, yeah. Rip it open.
Yeah.
It's one of the best sounds.
Writing Gabriel's songbook was really therapeutic.
That was my favorite book.
Yeah.
I loved that novel. It was so you know? Okay, here we go.
Ooh, cool.
So Blood Sisters by Vanessa Lilly.
Okay.
And the reason I got you this is I briefly mentioned her a few weeks ago when we saw each other in Nashville because you were teaching Native American literature class this semester, right? Mm-hmm. And so you were rattling off all of these authors, and I thought I'd add to the collection, maybe not to teach, but another Native voice. So she's Cherokee. She's from eastern Oklahoma in Miami.
Yeah.
And she now lives in Rhode Island. But this book is very similar to Gabriel's songbook of a return home of an archaeologist in Rhode Island who needs to come help with a missing persons case in eastern Oklahoma.
Very cool.
And
the theme of the focus of this semester's Native American Lit course is on Native American crime fiction. So this is perfect.
So I just thought with that and the parallels to your stories and how it takes you home and like, what is important to you comes out in your writing, whether it's fiction or nonfiction or poetry, just like Walnut is important to you. She's never going to leave eastern Oklahoma, in her heart. And so she wrote this to take her back there. And now she's coming out with a sequel novel.
Nice.
In October. So.
Good. Excellent.
Yeah. So that's the first one.
I look forward to that. Yeah. And if this course goes well with that focus, I'll do another one and maybe use that novel.
Heck yeah. So this one is because of your love of the open spaces of the West. I read a lot in your journals and blogs about Larry McMurtry and reading about Texas and then also Montana.
Right.
And if you want to talk about the best Western living writer right now, it is Elizabeth Crook of San Marcos, Texas.
I have not read anything of her.
She is a rock star in the Western world, and not enough people know her outside of that.
Okay.
Most people compare her to Larry and Charles Portis.
Okay.
She is a brilliant novelist. I interviewed her for the last season down in Austin.
I'll go listen to that as well.
Yeah, The Which Way Tree is the first book with this protagonist when he's 16. And this one plus the follow-up, her latest novel, The Madstone, which is the protagonist 3 years later, they're both epistolary.
Okay.
And this character is writing letters to two different people for different reasons in these books. But both of these have a follow-up if you like them and want to go to the next one. But I think you'll really dig Elizabeth. She's one of the greatest writers. And in terms of Texas, when I think of Texas, I think of her novels.
Okay. All right. Great. Yeah. I've been on a Western kick just here the last few days.
Heck yeah.
We'll talk about in a minute.
All right. So I hope you enjoyed those.
I will. Thank you much. Thanks, Matt.
Now, before we begin with your 6 books, I got to tell you how wild what happened last night was. Guess where I spent the night?
I'm afraid of questions like that. I'm not going to guess.
You won't guess. Let me see it. Let me find this picture just so you can understand. The serendipity with this moment is scary. Like,
oh my, wow.
The Stackhouse home.
I have never seen it that color, but I recognize the house.
They painted it blue.
Yeah.
So,
and you could see Runyon from there.
Right over the ridge?
We're just down the river to the right.
Yep. There's that stand of, like, if you look beyond the island, that's where Runyon was.
Yeah.
And this was completely accidental because with all of my interviews, if I can go to someone's childhood home, there it is.
Right there. That's Stackhouse right there.
That's where I was. And we're looking at a map right now. But just over that island, there's Runyon. And I was staring at it this morning when I woke up because I got there at dark. And listen to how this happened. Okay. So 2 of my friends own it and live there.
Oh, yeah?
And I forgot that they did. So Michael Deshane is a great poet in Asheville.
All right.
He came to read last fall. So fall of 24 at City Lights. And I met he and his partner, Reagan. And we were talking and whatnot. And they mentioned that they live in some historic home up in Madison County. And I probably heard the name Stackhouse a year ago and just forgot because I didn't visit them or anything at the time. And then Michael came last weekend to read with two other poets at City Lights.
Mm-hmm.
And we were I was talking about coming up to visit you, and I was telling them, I think I'm coming up near your way to look at Walnut and where Michael grew up. And this author I'm going to interview. And they were like, oh, that's like right down the street from us.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. You do live up there. Where do you live again? And they're like, oh, yeah, like just a few minutes away from there in Runyon and all the things you're talking about. And I was like, oh, yeah, man. It was like, I'm really trying to get into the history there and visit as many sites as I can. And they're like, man, it'd be a shame it would be crazy if you knew the owners of the Stackhouse home there. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, that would be crazy. Like, that would be pretty sweet to see, wouldn't it? And they looked at each other and kind of laughed. And I was like, that's where you live. That was just last Saturday.
Wow.
And so they were like, please come stay. Mm-hmm. So in the morning, you can go to Walnut and Runyon and gallivant around. So that's how I spent the morning.
How cool.
And I went to Walnut.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Free Will Baptist Church.
That was the church I grew up in. That one and the Methodist church on the corner where apparently the tree is still down.
Yeah.
There at my cousin was there just recently. My cousin from Michigan was down visiting or doing some fishing or something, maybe, I don't know. But he took a picture, and the tree that was in the Methodist yard is still down. That's the church that Leesa and I got married in, right?
I love it. I knew it. And this is why I do it, because it's so cool to see these connections. And I was like, it's on the way. Why not?
Yeah. We've had this really ecumenical, I think that's the right word, upbringing where neither the Free Will Baptist Church nor the Methodist Church was able to afford a full-time minister. So the Methodists had one twice a month, and the Free Will had one twice a month. So on every first and third Sunday, we would have Sunday school. Every Sunday, we'd have Sunday school at our respective churches. Every first and third Sunday, the Methodists then left their church and came to the Free Will Baptist.
Wow.
For preaching. And then every second and fourth Sunday, the opposite happened. The Free Will Baptist went to the Methodist church.
Look at that.
And then the four churches in Walnut, including the Presbyterian and the Missionary Baptist, on fifth Sundays, they all got together. It was
incredible. I could not believe how many churches are in that tiny place.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the epitome of like a blip on the radar. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like you could go by it in 30 seconds.
Right. My mom played piano at the Free Will Baptist. My aunt played piano at the Methodist.
I remember reading that. I was like, there's where your musical roots come from. And I was like, I got to go see where this piano playing was happening. Mm-hmm. Oh, man. And it was cool to be there. It's a beautiful, Madison County's a gem.
It is.
Oh, my gosh. It's stunning.
I think they actually call that.
Do they? Of course they do.
The jewel of Madison County.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Jewel Hill.
Yeah. What Walnut used to be, that was the name of Walnut in an earlier time.
And you referenced that in, who lives there in Gabriel's songbook? Gabriel's parents?
Yeah. They live in Jewel Hill.
I mean, how could you put all of those things in your books and me not see it?
Yeah.
It's one thing if it was all out in California or something. Yeah. I'm like on the way through those mountains. Like, come on. So I stayed at Stackhouse last night. Yeah. And this morning was looking over at Runyon, the ghost town that you bring alive in your stories. And I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, that's very cool. Very cool.
But the reason I did that is because it's obviously an important place to you and your writing. I mean, I was not ready for how many references, like actual references that you could like go search out were going to be in your books. And I found this picture from 1987 online on your blog.
Yep.
And it's been driving me crazy that I could not find this house of where this picture was from.
That's from the house that I grew up in.
I know, but where is it? I tried to find it.
It's just down, there at the Methodist church where the tree is lying down. If you just go down the hill, if you're standing there, if you're at the stop sign, you go down the hill to the left. It's at the stop sign down there. When you hit 2570, that intersection, the house just sits right there on the left.
I had to have passed it. And I couldn't, because I was also like, maybe these buildings are not there. Like, I was trying to get the perspective, but I just feel like this picture captures so much of your writing.
That's basically from the front yard of the house where I grew up.
It's incredible. And then I was reading a great interview you did with one of your former students. Mm-hmm. And I'm blanking on the name, and I'm sorry about
Possibly
that.
Abby Lewis. maybe.
If you hear what I'm going to read, when you were talking about your story collection, Twilight Reel, you said this about writing about place. But part of thinking about the story collection and how it became organized and what develops out of that, striving for a sense of place, especially for me in writing about Appalachia, is that sense of place goes beyond the physical, beyond the day-to-day. It's seasonal. There's a quality about each month that you can feel in the air, and you can see it on the mountainside sides as those changes take place. As I was thinking about the stories, I wanted to recreate that place thoroughly as I could, and to me, that meant setting the stories in the calendar. I remember early on, someone responding to one of the stories said, "I can really feel the winter in this." And I read that interview and soon found this picture.
Yeah.
And I was like, no wonder, right? So I want to talk about Walnut and the fictional Runyon, because this is your postage stamp, as you say, you know, with respect to Faulkner. Like, this is the place where everything just is bursting out, and it's so important to you. It's where you're rooted. So talk about how this place has played not only into your own story, but your imagination. I mean, it's incredible how much you bring this to life, which is really important.
Yeah. Okay, so I came there after my father retired from the Air Force when I was maybe 5 years old. We were living in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So I came there and lived from the time I was 5 into my 20s. This was home. We lived initially in a mobile home at the end of a fairly long yard. And then when my grandfather died in 1968, we moved into the house with my grandmother and lived there for the rest of my growing up. So there are the fields, there's the family. The family was made up of, there were 11 kids. My grandfather had 11 kids, 2 from a first wife who died shortly after the second was born, and then 9 with the woman who was my grandmother. So there's all the richness of family, and all of them pretty much went to Michigan in the 40s, you know, the older ones.
In which city or cities?
Mostly Port Huron.
Wow.
Port Huron, Maryville, St. Clair. In that area.
Yeah.
They may have started out in Detroit, but they ended up in Port Huron and in that area. And they were all the older ones. All 4 of the younger ones stayed south, which was my 2 youngest uncles, and then the 2 youngest of the family, which was my mother and my aunt. All of them stayed south. So just that, family all the time, because the Michigan folks came twice a year, right? And we went up there at least once a year, if not twice. So that's part of it. There is the church thing that I was just talking about. In addition to all of that about the church services, our youth group was at the Presbyterian Church and that sort of thing. You hear also it's kind of cliche now, but at the same time, it's not something that happens anymore, that kids would leave the house in the morning and not come back until supper time, right? And those hills that are there, we traipsed those hills. I remember lots of times I walked to the top of this mountain.
Oh, my gosh.
Right? During the day. We could go up Thomas Branch to Eatman's farm and then up the hills mountain from there.
I know now where Thomas Branch is.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, all of that, plus at the Methodist Church there is the graveyard, where my grandfather, for most of my life, was buried there. He died when I was about 10. My father was also from this. So these are all my mother's people. My father was also from the same community. He and my mother graduated high school together. He lived a little bit in a place called Brush Creek, which is between Walnut and Marshall.
Yeah.
So Dad was from Brush Creek area. So those grandparents are buried in the Red Hill Church Cemetery over there. So all of that just sort of, the depth of family and history. And I was never good at the real stories. My brother is really good at the real stories. My mom, in fact, used to say, Michael, you have no common sense because you don't know anybody. You don't know anybody. In the place where everybody knows everybody, I didn't know him.
Wow.
It's because I had other stuff in my head,
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah. But my brother was always really good at that. But in that place that is so connected, I mean, whether or not I knew them, they knew who I was just because of whose boy I was, right? So all of that just kind of weaves through. I also had one of the uncles who stayed south became a Methodist minister, and he's very learned and used to quote Flannery O'Connor and Ralph Waldo Emerson in his sermons.
Awesome.
So it had that kind of, just sort of rich language, right? And he was also a fan of Thomas Wolfe, and so there were those kinds of influences. So it was just a very rich, very musical family. Lots of time. Like I said, the aunts and my mother playing piano. Most of the uncles playing guitar and mandolin. And so family reunions were very musical, and there's a scene in Gabriel's Songbook where he's walking around on Stackhouse Island on a July 4th, and the music that he's hearing, there was really just what was on the front porch at that house.
Wow.
Yeah,
you can tell even in the fiction just the depth of connection to these places and how personal it is, and how much you love these mountains, I mean, they're part of you.
Yeah. There's a long story in a Twilight Reel called Decoration Day.
It's a good one.
And there's a section in there where they're doing a guy's giving a tour, basically, of a sort of a Stackhouse Civil War site or something like that.
Yeah.
And that guy and the play that's that's part of the tour is really just all of my uncles and aunts sort of shoehorned in there. Just some of them, turned into one person, but I tried to get all of them in little bits about their stories, just sort of into that little section of that story.
I love it.
Yeah,
and it's kind of one of those things. We were talking about this last night. Michael and Reagan and I have, they're like, why do you visit these small places? I was like, well, people need to remember them. People need to know them. Yeah. Really, I mean, there's so many folks that have lived and died here. I think that's special, and especially when you have someone that takes you there, that you can. I remember walking around with Hilda Downer and bandana, which technically doesn't exist anymore. Right. They got absorbed by the next town over, and so I think for a lot of folks who grew up in these towns that can kind of see it fading, like Runyon did, right. to the extreme degree of literally disintegrating, because everybody left. It's important that, even these novels still give life to these places and the history, which is rich and beautiful and messy and all the things that, but it's not just Asheville, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's all these places. And that's why I love these books, is it took me into a world that I hadn't been in before.
Yeah. Well, in Walnut, there's the school, which much of it is not there anymore. It burned down I don't know if it was the 80s or 90s.
Is that one that said Home of the Panthers on the
probably,
sign?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right in Walnut there.
Yeah.
Next to the Free Will Baptist Church and the Missionary Baptist Church. So there was that, but then just below that, and this wasn't in my lifetime, there was a hotel in Walnut.
Whoa.
Yeah, the Hotel Switzerland in Walnut, which had its little window boxes and all of.
I love it.
So it was right there in so-called downtown Walnut, right there in the curve before you start up the hill toward the Free Will Baptist, and the school is on your right. In that curve was a little kind of general store that also had a post office in it. And so, so Walnut used to have a lot of stuff, but of course it's all gone now.
Yeah.
Except for the churches. But even I don't even know, the Methodist Church is not active anymore. But I think the other three are, as far as
they're beautiful structures.
Yeah.
I mean, I was mesmerized. Right? I love looking at old churches.
Yeah.
It's difficult for me to road trip through Appalachia in the South. because I stop
There's so many.
so frequently, either to look at the outside or even try to sneak inside if I can, if no one's parked outside. But like there are houses next to the Free Will Baptist. So I was like, I'm not going to try to. People are going to be like, who's this guy?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just really cool to be there. And I'm curious though, when you left for Nashville, you're gone for a decade writing songs. Clearly, you never totally left home in your mind, right? You were always thinking about it. It's a special place. But how did being away change your relationship to Madison County, being in a completely different environment in Nashville, which you write about both of those extremes in your novels with your characters?
I don't know. It's probably not that different from anybody else that goes away, only that it became a place. Once I was in Nashville and coming back, it became a place where nobody really knew what I did. So I've gone to Nashville. They know I'm doing music or whatever, but none of the people there really understand the music business or what's going on there. And so it became, in many ways, a life that I couldn't really share that much with the people back home in Walnut, or just to give updates or news or whatever. But for the most part, it was they became two fairly separate worlds. I mean, I lived pretty much the same in both of them, but at the same time, it was they were very supportive. My parents were very supportive. The community was very supportive. I think seems like I remember the Free Will Baptist Church that I grew up in, when I was getting ready to leave, they voted to give me $100.
Oh my gosh!
For going away.
I love it.
Yeah, they knew that I wrote songs. I mean, my family knew that I wrote songs, and they were supportive of that. They had no idea what I was going into to try to do something with that.
Yeah.
But I have this one memory of my grandmother. And I was home. I can't remember if it was before I went to Nashville or just on one of the trips back. But my grandmother, like I say, we lived with her in the family home that all the kids had grown up in, all my aunts and uncles. I remember I was in my 20s or maybe even late teens, whenever this happened. I don't know when it was, but it would have been somewhere in there. And so I'm staying up all night writing songs and sleeping half the day. And I remember my grandmother's bedroom was next to mine, and I remember waking up one morning, it was probably about 11 or so, and I hear somebody, a woman from the community who's there visiting my grandmother. So that I hear her asking about the family, how's Plumer doing? That's my dad. And what's Jerry doing? And, Jerry was off, he worked with production credit, Federal Land Bank, so I had a job like that. And they get around to me, and they called me Mike. And they said, well, what's Mike doing? And I hear my grandmother say, well, he's in there in the bed, I reckon. In the bed? What's he doing in the bed at this time of day? Get tickled. My grandmother just said, he works at night. She didn't say he's up writing songs. She said he works at night.
Keep it simple.
It was,
I love that.
It was awesome.
But it shows, like the support for the idea of what you're doing, but not really knowing what it is, which, to be honest, most people don't. I just think it's cool that you got to be there. I'm a little jealous, I'm not going to lie, before the blow up of Nashville. But I didn't know you were a flute player. Yeah. You majored in flute?
I did.
At Mars Hill?
At Mars Hill College it was then. Just a quick story about that. Madison County had 5 separate high schools when I was coming up through the grades. When I was in the 9th grade, they consolidated the sports teams.
Okay.
So the sports we had a single high school football team, Madison High, for the first time when I was in the 9th grade. And then when I was in the 10th is when they had the school finished, and we actually all came there to,
5
to Madison
into 1.
High. Yeah. So 5 schools into one. I mean, there were kids, as I recall, that lived in Spring Creek, who probably in the winter never saw the light of day at home during the week. They caught the bus before sunup, got home after dark.
Madison County's not small.
No, and it wasn't easy to get around. I think they were probably promised a road to cut over Big Pine straight into Spring Creek, but it never came to pass. So they had to go all the way to Hot Springs and around. And anyway,
that would take forever.
Anyway, when we got Madison High, we had enough people and I guess funding to start a marching band, start a band program. And so I wanted to be that. I liked music. I had learned to play guitar a little bit with the they're called the Big Muddy Band in Gabriel's songbook. We were actually the Whitewater Band.
Oh, okay.
But I told the band director that I wanted to play drums, and he's like, "No, that's not going to happen." Which I thought I had a good sense of rhythm, but I didn't. I mean, I had a good sense of rhythm, but I'm one of those drummers amaze me because their four appendages, their hands and feet can do different things at the same time.
Yeah,
and I couldn't do that. Right. So I said, okay. I had just gotten introduced to Jethro Tull, the English band Jethro Tull, and I said, okay, I want to play flute, and he said no. He said, and he literally said something like this: with those lips, you need to play tuba.
Wow.
Yeah. So I guess my lips are large. Leesa loves them, but anyway. So I said, okay, I'll do that if you'll let me buy a flute through the music program, right? Because you could get one for $10 a month. And I said, I'll just play it myself, right? And so whatever the things that they wrap around, is it a sousaphone maybe that wraps around the body, like the marching tuba, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, those were on order, and they kept not coming. And so I was at band just hanging out, and he said, Cody, I'm getting tired of seeing you sitting around like this. So bring the flute in, and you could do that until the sousaphones get here. I brought it in and ended up being like first or second chair flute. So I went on to Mars Hill College, and they were kind enough to let me in because I'd only been playing a couple of years. I tried to get into East Carolina, I think, and didn't get in there, but Mars Hill allowed me in, and I came a long way fairly quickly. And so, I was a music major there, flute major. I didn't finish, but I was a performance major, which is, you got to be a decent player to get in the performance track. And so, yeah.
I love it.
So, I still play.
The flute?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, you got to bust that out of one of your readings. Can you imagine?
Well, yeah, I could do that.
I don't think anybody would be thinking, hey, Streets of Nashville, guy's going to bust out a flute in the middle of a reading.
Well, there's that character, the flutist, in Twilight Reel, and that character recurs in Avalon Moon, the new one coming up.
It's too perfect. So when Avalon Moon comes out.
When Avalon Moon comes out, we'll bust out the flute.
Oh, my gosh. I love it. Man, you've lived such a rich life, so much music, and I'm not surprised to hear who you became, learn of that through your story when you were getting all these awesome literary references at church. You were seeing all these people play music. I mean, it's just, at a certain point, it's just in you. It's like you ended up going two routes, albeit circuitously, that makes sense for you, it feels like.
I remember thinking in Nashville, I wanted to be a rock star, ! Right? And that's what everybody that I worked with in Nashville thought I was going to be. So nobody ever forced me, we need you to write a song for Clint Black or whatever. They never did that because they assumed that I was going to be the one that recording them. I was going to be the star, singing them, recording the songs that I wrote. So I was never guided into sort of a Nashville song machine thing, right? But I always had it in mind, I'm in my early mid-20s at this time, and I'm thinking, okay, stardom is just around the corner, but it's not going to last the rest of my life. So probably by the time I'm 40, I'll just leave that and go back to school and become a English professor. That was what.
And you did. I mean,
I did it about a decade earlier than I planned.
but like, it's funny how you know yourself that well.
Yeah.
It's like, let's give this a shot. Let's really do it.
Yeah. I felt like, okay, I became as good a songwriter as I could be. Product like Genesis Road and others. And that was not going to happen. And at that point, it was just like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go back to school. So I wrote the first draft of Gabriel's Songbook as my undergraduate thesis at UNCA, and then I wrote 4 of the Twilight Reel stories as my master's thesis at Western Carolina, 93 to 95.
I do remember that.
And then but then I had to sort of put those aside for 20 years. While I wrote about Charles Brockden Brown and others, and established this career here. And then once this career was, I made all of my promotions to full professor, and then I said, okay, I'm going back to Gabriel's Songbook.
Heck yeah.
Finished it, published. Finished Twilight Reel, published, and then on the Streets of Nashville.
Hey, last 8 years. Last 8 years for you, writing's been pretty damn good.
It has been good,
and you got another one coming out. It's like this is kind of the golden years of writing for you right now.
It
truly,
it really
you're
is.
On a roll.
And I try not to think about it as desperation, trying to get something done before the end.
Hey, if you keep churning out good books, right. Whatever does the trick,
Yeah.
But it's interesting hearing you say that about when you were in your young to mid-20s. There was only one captain's log journal entry that I wrote down. Mm-hmm. And this is what it said, because it felt like a big moment.
All right.
Exactly what you're referencing. And then we'll dive into Charles Brockden Brown, because it explains so much about you and why we're here. But this is what you said on January 21st of 1982 in your journal. I have a lot of fear about this whole life. First, I fear what my music will turn out as in comparison with what I have heard it in my soul as being. I'm not sure Earl will want what I want, and as a result, since he's the boss, my music may soon be less my music. Second, I fear playing to the acceptance of the public. What will their reaction be, if any? When the single of Daisy goes out, will anyone care at all for the heart and soul of my child? Can I accept the fact that it probably won't go to number 1, that it might not even make the Hot 100, or that it may not even be played at all? Can I be satisfied with what does or does not happen? Third, I fear the stage. Not the performing, but the relating. No, not really even the relating, but rather the entertaining. Sure, I can entertain my circle of friends, but that's easy because they love me for myself and my music for being mine. Can I step out front and take a song or story and make people laugh or cry? Make them feel joy? Pain, soothing, exhilaration. Fourth, I fear longevity. Can I write enough good songs to successfully sustain a career for 5 years, 10, 20, or 30? Fifth and last, I fear myself. I am very weak, and I am afraid I might all too easily get caught up in myself, my music, my public, and or the business. Might I become too caught up in all these things and their busyness and forget who I am, and more importantly, whose I am?
That's good.
That was some powerful shit, man. I mean, I was like, oh my God, you're just writing this in your house or whatever at night? Mm-hmm. But that, I mean, exactly what we're talking about. Yeah. It's like you don't want to lose yourself in the very thing you're trying to pursue, but you write about that, I mean, in your books of just, shedding your authenticity to become whatever the music industry wants you to be.
Right.
And for a lot of people, that leads to their demise, that they're undoing. Because when, it reminds me of that scene in Pig with Nicolas Cage, where he sees one of his old proteges in the kitchen, and he's like, now running this stupid restaurant that clearly he never wanted to make because he wanted to be so accepted by the world. And now he comes face to face with his mentor, who's basically saying, like, someday you're going to look in the mirror and you're not even going to see yourself. You won't even know who that is, And it's like, I love those moments where people have to confront what does it mean to do this if I'm not even me anymore? So, I mean, this was really powerful to read for you at what age was that? 82?
82, I would have been 24.
Whew.
23, 24.
That was a big moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what, I think ultimately from there to Gabriel's Songbook, I finally, because I still wanted those things that I'm writing about there.
Yeah.
Right. And they were still hopefully, I still hoped that they were out there ahead of me. But I think writing Gabriel's Songbook was cathartic in the sense that it showed me that I probably would not have been happy had I made it in a way that was outside my control, right? And so I mean, you only get one Bruce Springsteen who's able to do exactly who he is, for 50 years, right? So to expect to be able to do that, I'm sure at one point I did expect that I could, but that's just,
Well, and I thought it was interesting after reading this and looking back at the Gabriel character, and when those two brothers are trying to dress him, like completely change his public appearance and what he wore, and then immediately Gabriel's thoughts drift to, what if I went home in this attire?
Yeah.
So it's like, you're always thinking about
what if my mom saw me on the the cover of the Inquirer, the National Enquirer, like at the grocery store.
So that's, I found that was a really, really powerful thing to read. And, then to like, whose am I? Right? Thinking about your folks.
Yeah.
And then eventually Leesa and children, right? Like you've been able to keep perspective since this, but it's it's a vulnerable thing to write. And I'm glad I was able to find it somewhere in those blog posts. But it all led to where you are now, an English professor. And if you hadn't left that life, we wouldn't get to Charles Brockden Brown, right. Which is one of the coolest authors that anyone shared with me recently.
Nice.
And we need to talk about this book and who Charles Brockden Brown is to you. So we'll start with that for the first book on the bed.
Okay. All right. Great. All right. So I have for you to consider Charles Brockden Brown's novel Wieland, which was his first published novel in 1798. So this is early on in American literature. They didn't really know what they were doing novel-wise. The novel had been established in England for at least half a century, if not more. And so as it transitioned across the Atlantic to early America, you have somebody like Charles Brockden Brown who says, I'm going to try this. Right? And he wanted to be a author by trade and make his living doing that. But he ran into, similar, I guess some similar roadblocks in that, there wasn't a distribution network that could support him, in those days. So anyway, how I came to Brown was I went to Nashville. I went to Columbia, South Carolina, to the University of South Carolina to get my PhD with the very specific plan of focusing on 20th century American literature and minoring in Southern literature and doing a dissertation on Cormac McCarthy.
Of course.
That's where I went. I got there. There was a whole group of new PhD students gathered in our office building as an introductory thing, and it seemed like at least a third of them wanted to do that exact thing. And
I was first.
I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I am 37, 38 years old. If I'm gonna get a job, compete with these people, I got to do something different, right? So I spent the first year still focusing in that area, but then the following summer, which would have been the summer of 1996, I started reading the reading list, right, for the PhD. And Brown's novels were on there, and I hadn't read him before. And so I read Wieland and Edgar Huntley, and they're both just wild novels. But just as an aside, just in general, I resonated. Having grown up in Madison County, North Carolina, in the 60s and 70s, it was really a lot, I think, like the 19th century, right? So the reading list for the 19th century and earlier just resonated with me more. I never experienced a lot of the 20th century angst and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, right? I was wondering if there was a real personal connection between the life. It seems strange.
The religious life of Nathaniel Hawthorne and all of these things were much more resonated with me much more than the sort of isolation and anxiety of the 20th century authors. And so I switched to the 19th century, and I specifically read Brown and thought, wow, this guy is really interesting. And so I started doing some research on him, and at that time, this was again around '96. There was a movement starting in the early American literature to kind of take a second look at Brown's career, because he had published these 4 sort of wild novels, right, in quick succession, and then a couple more that were really much more conventional, right, epistolary novels. Or traditional epistolary novels, and just letters back and forth between people. And then he went into magazine editing and writing, and the interpretation of that was through much of the 20th century, as far as I could tell, was that it was a cop-out. That he went from being this sort of radical fiction writer to a hack magazine writer. And I said, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's an easy transition to make. So I don't think he did that. So basically, what I ended up doing is focusing on. He was the editor of 3 magazines in succession, 3 very different magazines, and so I ended up looking at the middle one, which lasted basically the longest of the 3, and just sort of trying to reinterpret what he's doing there as editor and writer that is not the opposite of what he was doing in the novels, but continuing to try to be sort of out there and forward thinking and thinking about what the character of the new nation is and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What are the dangers of the new nation? Right?
Yeah, well, that's a lot of the concerns of his work.
And so there were people out there. I mean, but Brown is the one that I focused on. Who, in Wheeland, there was a family, the Wheeland family, which is a brother and sister. The brother's wife and their children. The sister is single, but she's sort of paired up with the brother of her brother's wife.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So so the things that Brown is dealing with in there is this sort of isolated community that has no particular religious leadership. He gives a history thing of the family at the beginning of it, and it's clear that while the family has the forebears have been very fascinated with religion, they have approached it in such a way that they don't have anybody guiding them in it. So they just get an idea, and then they cut themselves off from all sort of establishment of a church, and they just make what they will out of these ideas.
Yeah.
Right. And then the father of the brother and sister moves from England, from Europe to the environs of Philadelphia, and sets up this conclave, this ranch, farm, whatever you want to call it, on the outskirts of Philadelphia. So you're between the city and whatever's beyond that, which they weren't really that familiar with it. There was nothing there but wildness.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it was
so the
thick.
wilderness. Yeah, so the Philadelphia, urbanity of Philadelphia and the wildness on the other side. Right, so that's where they were, and they're in the middle of that. A character named Carwin, who has these strange abilities with his voice, of being able to mimic any sound, any voice that he hears, but also this weird thing you used to see in the back of comic books about how to throw your voice to make it sound like it's coming from somewhere else. Did you ever?
Whoa,
do you ever
no.
You know, comic books, when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, in the back of the comic books, they always had these little ads for stuff you could order by mail, right? And, you know, I mean, there was a submarine. Who knows how many people died in that trap? You know, there was one with build muscles. It shows a guy getting sand kicked in his face on the beach. Build your muscles, be a man. But the other, and X-ray glasses where you could see through people's clothes and stuff. But one of the things that they sold was a booklet telling you how to throw your voice to be able to speak and make it sound like somebody's speaking over there. Right?
Whoa!
So Carwin knows how to do this, right? So this is not just in comic books. This was back in the 1700s, and so he comes into their conclave secretly at first. He's hiding because somebody's after him. And so what he does is, if he is about to be discovered by one of the Whelans, he exercises his vocal ability and tricks them into thinking, well, like the first time we encounter Carwin, the Whelans have been up in their little sort of summer sanctuary place, and they're reading something. Maybe a play or a letter or something like that. But anyway, they're back at the house, and they want to refer to that letter, but they left it at the gazebo, right? And so I think his name is Theodore. Anyway, they just call him Wheeland all the time. Wheeland starts back. Unbeknownst to him, Carwin is just hanging out in the gazebo, and he sees Wheeland coming. And so he imitates Wheeland's wife's voice and throws it back to the house so that Wheeland thinks his wife is calling him back to the house. And he goes back, and that starts this sort of downhill slide of this mental state that is not really good in Wheeland to begin with.
Yeah.
Right? And so...
Oh, that's unsettling.
Yeah. So he does that for self-protection, but also he does it just to mess with their minds sometimes. Right?
I mean, if you have the power,
yeah.
you might as well.
But one of the things to think about is that, I mean, we are in this new political experiment of the United States democracy. It's a republic, but it's a democratic republic, right? And so Brown, it seems to me, is kind of exploring the possibilities. You know, if you give everybody a voice, how do you validate those voices? How do you make sure that the voices that are speaking loudest have the talents, the abilities to lead, right? And this is what can happen when there is a voice that comes out of nowhere that has no interest in the well-being of the other people, and is only self-serving, right?
Whoa. See, people say things from the 1700s can't matter now.
Right.
I mean, you are literally speaking our existence. Mm-hmm. This is what we're dealing with.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. So Brown is, and in fact, on Christmas Day, December 25th of 1798, Brown mailed a copy of this to Thomas Jefferson, who was the Secretary of State at the time. Power move. Under John Adams, and said, I don't know if you like fiction, but I think you should read this. I think you can learn some stuff from it. I mean, he's a 27-year-old kid.
Can you imagine?
He's 27 years old, and he sends this to Thomas Jefferson. And he actually got a response. Jefferson never said anything about reading it. He said, he sent him a letter back saying, yes, I do. I enjoy fiction, and I'm sure I'll enjoy this when I get a chance to read it. So as far as we know, that's where that ended. But
that is awesome.
But he knew. I mean, Brown knew what sort of political implications his story could have. Right.
That's incredible. And what a device to use.
Yeah.
With that trick of the voice.
He called it billoquism. Huh. Speaking from the belly or something like that.
Yeah, Carwin the Billoquist.
Carwin the Billoquist.
Someone needs to make a movie
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Somebody made a musical of Wieland, and I've got it in my Amazon account, but I haven't had a chance to watch it. But
That's awesome.
he wrote the follow-up, which is as a prequel. Memoirs of Carwin the Billiquist is a prequel to this, and shows how Carwin came to be Carwin.
Wow.
Right, with his abilities and just showing some of the things that he did as a child that tell us this is not a good character.
Yikes!
Right, he's suspect. Right.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, I need to read this.
Yeah, so it's a wonderful novel. But again, it is in a sense epistolary, because it's basically just one long letter, right? Clara Wieland is just writing to her friends. You want to know what happened to me? Well, I don't like thinking about it, but here it is, and tells the whole story, novel-length letter.
I've gotten this one is a letter to a judge.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah?
Where this character in the Which Way Tree is recounting for a judge a crime he witnessed from Confederate soldiers in the Texas Hill Country.
Yeah.
But in the midst of that letter, he's also, because it all connects, is telling this tale of he and his sister going to chase a panther through Hill Country that killed their mother.
Wow. Wow, yeah.
And so every chapter is, there's like 4 or 5, there's these different letters, and he's only writing when because he didn't have a pen or anything. And then the judge had to send him a pen. And so now he's recounting his life to this judge in a different city. And so I didn't even know that parallel, but it makes me feel good about that choice because I think that there's something to that style of novel where it's let's start here.
Yeah. And this was, in thinking about the whole dangers of, or the dangers of democracy, if not handled correctly. There was another woman, a young woman who's a generation younger than Brown, but she published a novel in 1812. Her name is Rebecca Rush, and published a novel named Kelroy. And there's a scene in there that just sort of plays out. Okay, so Carwin's in the bushes, right? He's in the dark, right? And nobody sees him doing his thing. But in Kelroy, there's a party going on, and there's a guy who's there who has no qualities at all to put him in this kind of society. The only thing he has to put him there is money, right?
Oh my gosh!
And he reveals himself to the people who do have the qualities to be there. And he's looking at a painting. And he's just starts laughing in the middle of this party and says, "Hey, this painter has portrayed Adam with 3 wives." The painting is actually of the Judgment of Paris, judging between Hera, Athena, and then the beautiful one. What's her name? Goddess of love. Aphrodite.
Yes, Aphrodite. Yep. There we go. We got there.
Well, and so this guy looks at this picture of naked people and an apple, and immediately, he has Genesis. That's his thought. He doesn't know that it's the other thing. Everybody else knows what it is, but he doesn't. So everybody kind of raises their eyebrows like,
yikes.
Yeah. So
wow.
So there you go.
But I love that, and especially in the context of this project. Where are you going to get Charles Brockden Brown? Yeah. One of my main goals is to get books out there that are just not widely read enough. And especially with this, it's from such a period that hardly anyone's read novels.
Yeah, exactly.
That imagine seeing this as a guest on your bed and being like, who on earth and what on earth? And what a weird guy, When
I say that I teach early American literature, most people say, well, Hawthorne, Poe? No, let's go back further.
Yeah. Well, I know you're a big Hawthorne fan, too.
And Hawthorne was inspired by and influenced by Brown.
Not surprised.
Which I think was interesting. And he mentions Brown in 2 or 3 of his, not his short stories, but his, what he called sketches.
And it was like he appeared in those stories, right?
Yeah, he mentioned. Well, he just mentions his name, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I knew we had to start with this. There was no other way.
He appears in Avalon Moon.
Oh man. See, this is why we get along. Everything has everything to do with everything.
Yeah,
man,
right.
He's everywhere. I love it,
Yeah.
and I'm excited about number 2 as well, because I wasn't expecting this, but important person. Tell us about this one.
This is a poetry collection called Merciful Days from Jesse Graves, who is ETSU's poet in residence. His office is just 2 doors down the hall there. Has been a friend for a while, but is a wonderful, wonderful poet. I think this is his 3rd collection. The first 2 award-winning, and I don't know if Merciful Days won awards, but I think it's I love all of them, but I think it's my very favorite of the 3 main first collections of poetry. I used a section of it for the epigraph of Twilight Reel.
I do remember that.
But it's a lot about the things that we've been talking about here. You know, this is sort of, I mean, Jesse grew up on a farm just north of Knoxville, and I'm trying to think what the name of the place is. I hear it all. Sharp's Chapel is where it is, north of Knoxville, and grew up as sort of a fairly younger child of a couple that had older children, but they were kind of gone, I think. So Jesse was kind of, I believe, sort of, mostly on his own with the family, with the mother and father, but the siblings were around as well. But Merciful Days is, it goes back to that farm. It's dedicated to his mother, and it's just a lot of things about family and history and the life that he remembered and the life that he couldn't remember himself, but saw through his parents. And so it's a lot about his brother too. He had a brother who was probably, I'm not sure how much older than Jesse I am, but probably about my age, I think, who died way too young. And so I think, Jesse in these poems, he's thinking about his father and brother especially, I think. But I just love it. It's the poems in here are just so beautiful.
I can even see why you'd get along based on what you're writing about,
Yeah.
just in 2 different places.
Yeah. We're lucky to have Jesse here. I think I don't know that he's ever been headhunted by other schools.
Oh yeah, well, could be.
But I have a feeling he probably has been. But
he's got a really great reputation among poets in the region.
Yeah,
a lot of people have wanted him to read with them at City Lights, and we haven't been able to make it work yet. But
we're very grateful to have him.
Is there a poem in here that you believe highlights this collection, that brings us to this farm, helps us understand what this is about?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things underlined here and there. But this is one that I just wrote, wow, exclamation point at the end of it. This is called Come Running. They amble across the field, drawn to shade, sniffing for uncropped clover and sprout, their slowness measurable by galactic tilt. From a distance, the calves look identical, but watch closely, and the shadings around the white faces range from salmon to maroon, and the little curls on their foreheads twist in tighter and looser tangles. If a baby separates from its mother, she calls for it like a foghorn. The lowing anyone can tell means, "Find me now." But listen closer, and a mother can signal her child with the slightest grunt from the other side of the field. No other calf will move or even look up, yet one comes running, summoned home.
Wow. Damn, that's good. I haven't read this collection.
That's a good one. It's a good one. And this is the, if I can read one more short one.
Please.
This is the one that I used the last half of for Twilight Reel. It's called Voice. Here my parents strolled around the family cemetery, my mother's people buried in land my father tended. I come alone to join them this late September evening. First cool winds of the season blowing heavy clouds between me and the crisp blue beyond. Gravestones bear the names of our personal history, so many who came and went before my time began. In the soft voice of a mind addressing itself, the interior sound only I can ever hear. Someday you will come here and never leave.
And literally, chills. And I was thinking about that epigraph a lot in Walnut.
Yeah.
And Stackhouse, because me and my friends who own Stackhouse were even talking about the Stackhouse Cemetery.
Yeah.
That's right by their house.
Right.
And just the depth of history in this tiny, microscopic place in the grand scheme of things. And yet, the weight of that, you just feel it. And
the Stackhouses that I knew are buried up there by the church in Walnut, beside where that tree is lying down. And my grandfather and grandmother are buried just on the other side of the church from there.
Yeah. So it felt like those particular lines really stuck with me.
Yeah.
And I'm glad now I have context for where those came from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and who, the person who wrote it and where he's from too, because it's like, I think that what he's writing about in this is perfect because so many people feel it.
Yeah.
It's not an Appalachian thing. It's not, I mean, it is.
Yeah.
Right. But you could just as easily
it's
have
not exclusively Appalachian.
Yeah. I mean, like I think about the places in rural Iowa that I've been.
Right.
Had the same conversations.
Yeah.
And that's what's beautiful about this is this there's this spirit that's adjoining all these people and honoring the past. And this is a really great collection to share. And I feel like, Jesse Graves, by all accounts, great person, great poet. And
his first two, each one, I think the only time a poet has won back-to-back, well, I'm not sure they were back-to-back, but it won the Weatherford Award from Appalachian Studies, 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, each of the first collections.
That's incredible.
It is.
Wow. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Because no one else would have shared this, It's like so cool that we're going to see these Charles Brockton Brown and Jesse Graves next to each other on the book list for this episode. Yeah. Fantastic.
Good.
So I'm curious about number 3.
Number 3, I didn't know if you would have run across this. This is Ivan Doig.
I have not read this.
This book has probably stayed with me the most and the longest of anything that I've read.
Whoa.
I read it in the 80s. And it, granted, it came at a time when I was developing a kind of sort of an obsession with the West, right? And I had an uncle that lived in Rapid City, South Dakota, and sometime in the 80s, my brother and I just drove out there to see him. We hadn't seen him in years.
I also read those blog posts into the West.
Oh, yeah?
I was like, you're nuts in the best way. You drove out there to find your family without telling them and not quite knowing where they were. Is that correct?
Something like that.
Like,
yeah.
And I think what was the line you wrote? Like most things we lose, we find them right where we left them. Mm-hmm. That was on one of your entries as you were going out west. Yeah. And it's the same with people. Yeah. So I love that. So
right.
South Dakota.
So anyway, I think my friend Noel, who was sort of Noel was a friend that I made in Nashville. When I moved to Nashville, I lived with these two sisters that were from Asheville.
Wow.
And one of them I had been in school with was a voice major at Mars Hill, and she decided to move to Nashville as well. So she and her sister and I moved to Nashville. We had a house together in Hendersonville, and Noel was a guy that one of them met, and so he and I ended up breaking up. But Noel and I have stayed good friends all these years. But I think Noel was I always sort of felt like he was the smartest person I had ever met, right? And so a lot of my songwriting, even though it was about Leesa, still just the writing itself. Noel was always kind of my ideal reader.
Wow.
You know?
Okay. So that's an important person.
Yeah, yeah.
Jeez.
And I think he mentioned Ivan Doig to me. Noel's a big fan of the Montana writer Jim
Harrison?
Jim Harrison.
Yeah. Also of the Upper Peninsula in Michigan.
I probably shouldn't have said that, but
no, I know. I knew exactly who it was then.
But at some point, I'm pretty sure Noel mentioned Ivan Doig to me, and I got this. This is his first book. It's a memoir about growing up in Montana, and it's probably the most beautiful, cover to cover, the most beautiful language that I've ever read in a book.
That's high praise.
Yeah, it's.
What about it? I mean, coming from totally different landscape out west, like what stuck with you? Why was this so special?
Part of it is just the language itself. Part of it is the landscape that I was already in love with and just enamored with, of just those open spaces, the wide open spaces, the mountains. Just the feel of the West, right? I mean, if you're driving across South Dakota, it seems to me that you're in the Midwest until you cross the Missouri River in the middle of South Dakota, and then you're in the West.
Yeah,
right. There's like the Badlands and all of that.
It's a beautiful drive.
Yeah, and that part, when I would drive out there, I would drive just to get past that point, and then I'm good to go, right? And so it was just a landscape that fascinated me. The language just so lyrical and beautiful. And he's telling the story of being a boy who was kind of not like other. I mean, he was very bookish, but also working the farm. He's got the sort of early death of his mother kind of hangs over the story, and his father is from Scotland, as many of the immigrants out in that area were, and ultimately he ends up living much of his life with his father and his maternal grandmother. So that they make a trio, the three of them.
Wow!
Right, and it's just a really powerful story. His father's basically a really smart, talented ranch hand, wonder working with sheep and that sort of thing, so it's just terrific.
And it's interesting. A lot of the Appalachian writers I've talked to, and not everybody's written a book about it, like Jessie Van Eerden, where her novel Call It Horses, which I've probably given 3 times as gifts because I just love it so much.
Right.
But that is a road trip story of 3 women going from West Virginia out west for one of them who is sick with cancer to die because she wants to die in the West. And the others want to escape the swampy bogginess, the what feels like a suffocating Appalachia, to find themselves. Like that there's freedom in the West that you can't quite get in these mountains, because it does feel like you're just, in the most gentle way, they're holding you. And that's why people love them.
Give you an example of Noel and some of the things that made me think he talked about. We were talking about something one time, and somehow dance came into it, and landscape, and he just made this sort of offhand comment, as I recall, but it stuck with me. He says, if you go, dances in these mountains are in place, right? They're the clogging in one spot, right? Largely, right?
Yeah.
You go to Texas out on the plains, and they're sweeping
all
around
over
the ballroom.
place. Wow,
right?
That's such an interesting.
Yeah.
Whoa, it's true though, because there's only so much space you have here.
Yeah, I mean, the dance reflects the space that you live in, right?
Yeah, and like the spirit too, because think about a ranch hand out west. There's all that expanse, that openness. If you live in a holler in eastern Kentucky, or western North Carolina, East Tennessee,
you don't know what the weather is a quarter mile away from you.
I still struggle and I don't even live in like a holler, but where I am in Franklin, I still am surprised when a thunderstorm comes. You know, like I will never get used to in Ohio where I grew up, and especially out in Nebraska. I mean, for God's sake, you can see a tornado coming from forming for miles away, and in Appalachia, it just comes on you.
Yeah.
I don't ever get enough sun at my house. And there are some days where I'm like, damn, maybe I should like, go down to this park so I can just like sunbathe for the first time in my adult life. I'm like, do I need to sunbathe to get a little tan? Like, good.
Vitamin D,
like, am I sad because I just live on this mountainside and don't get any sunlight? Maybe. But that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Because, it's true.
And I used to go out there. I worked in a record store in Nashville for a long time, but then for toward the end, I had a writing deal with the publisher, and so I just got paid every month to write songs, and I didn't have any schedule. So a couple of times a year, I would just get my monthly check, put it in the bank, and hit the road.
I love it.
And just the guitar in the car, and I'm out west. But I remember very specifically coming back to Nashville, and about the time you get into eastern Oklahoma and Arkansas, and those trees are all of a sudden hanging over you, it's really like suddenly claustrophobic.
Yep.
Right? Even though there were no mountains, just the trees looming over you constantly was like being...
I try to describe this to people that can't understand that, none of my friends live in Appalachia, like from Ohio or Michigan, where I went to college. And when I took my trip out to see Elizabeth Crook for Books on the Bed and Naomi Shihab Nye and Issa Arsen, part of why I did that was because I knew what was coming this summer.
Yeah.
And I wanted to experience the openness of Texas and the hill country before I had to come back and be in this.
Yeah, right.
And it's not bad. I love Appalachia. Both feelings can exist, but even now, I am dying to take a road trip to someplace that's more flat and open. And now that, Reagan, who I stayed with, one of the people that owns the Sack House, she's from Oklahoma, north of Tulsa. And as we were talking, I'm like, gosh, dang, I just want to go. Yeah. I just want to drive to the northwestern corner of Oklahoma and not see a tree for miles. You know what I
mean? My cousin, my first cousin that I grew up with, who's closest to my age and more like brother, his daughter and son-in-law live in Utah, and they just had it seemed like they had decided they weren't going to have children, so they're sort of mid-late, they're like 36, 37, and they just had a child, and he's on his own. He was living here up in Kingsport, and he just sold everything and moved out there to be Grandpa, Papa Joe.
I love it.
And I can hardly wait to go visit.
Heck yeah.
To be out in Utah, and we were FaceTiming with him and his daughter and granddaughter last night, and just looking out the sliding glass door at just the expanse there, and there's a butte out in the distance.
One of my best friends lives in Salt Lake City, and one of my favorite vacations that I've done a lot is fly out there. We spend one night in Salt Lake City and drive south.
Yeah, and this is in Price,
oh my
Utah.
gosh,
that's where they live.
Wow, that's so cool. It's beautiful out there.
Yeah,
and I remember in your telling of this going out west to see your family, you mentioned that you didn't want to stay in Sturgis because of the biker rally.
I couldn't. Yeah.
Okay, well, funny enough, I'd taken a road trip out to Spokane, Washington for 12 days with my ex in graduate school from Nashville to work at Gonzaga for a summer. And I only did that because I wanted to meet my favorite rapper in Seattle. I didn't really care about that internship at all.
Which I think you have sent me.
Yes, Colin Morgan. Yeah, Ross Zion. Oh my gosh. Yeah, because you both remind me of each other when you talk.
That's right.
Your eloquence and yet growing up in rural South. But on the way back, I was alone. And I had to get from Spokane to Nashville in 3 days.
I've done something similar. Yeah.
And I wanted to get to western South Dakota that first day.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what the Sturgis Bike Rally was. And I pulled up to a Days Inn around midnight with bikers all over the parking lot, drinking, smoking. I had to pay $400 for a Days Inn room during the Sturgis Biker Rally. I paid $400 for like an hour and a half of sleep because they were so loud. I mean, everywhere it was bikers. And then I just was like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to get up before dawn and then drive to St. Louis like that. I couldn't sleep, but I made that mistake. Yeah. So I was laughing when I read that. I was like,
well, I stopped in Wall Drug, and not $400, but it was a Motel 6 in the 80s or in the early 90s, and it, or whenever it was. I don't know when it was. Anyway, maybe in the early 2000s. Anyway, the Motel 6 in Wall cost $130 a night.
Yeah, that's absurd.
So I drove into Rapid City, found the family, found they were okay, had dinner with them, and then I just left, heading out. I think I was heading down toward Denver, and just finally got to a place where I could get a Motel 6 for like $80.
Yeah, I was seeing some of those prices at Super 8s and Motel 6s, like $41. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, even in 2014, when I did that trip out west, the only reason we were able to do that on grad school money was motels were still like $45 a night in 2014. Yeah. And now you'd be lucky to get like the worst motel in a state for $45.
Now that I think about it, this was in 2006 or 7, because we had just bought a car that Leesa loved that was a 2006, and I took it and sort of broke it in on this trip.
Oh my gosh, I love it. But this explains so much of your love of the West, and I love memoirs about the West. I just read one that was written by the director of the MFA program at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, Deborah Jackson Taffa, and so I'm really reading a lot about the West right now, and going up to Montana would be nice. Yeah,
you need to get and Doig. This was his first book, and it was a memoir. There's another memoir about his mother and letters that she wrote to her brother when he was in maybe World War I.
Whoa.
But then the rest of his work largely is novel.
Yeah, that's what I've known him for. So I'm glad.
English Creek, and Ride With Me, Mariah, Montana, Whistling Season, and just lots of good stuff.
I love it. So what about number 4?
Number 4, this was in part, I had 5 picked out, and part of my books are, like they're all over the place because I'm just moving back into my office.
Yeah.
So literally this morning, I just was looking at my bookshelf and thinking, what do I have here and not in a box somewhere else that I just really love? Mm. And this has been one of my favorite novels. This is Gabriel Garcia Marquez, 100 Years of Solitude. And this is just something that I don't even remember why I first read it. I mean, probably just heard about it, but I've used it in class since, encountering it. And it's just a major kudos. And I think Garcia Marquez gave major kudos to Gregory Rabassa, I think is his name. Gregory Rabassa, who translated it. So it was written in Spanish, and I don't know. I mean, obviously the fame of the novel, that it won the Nobel Prize and all of that, suggests that it's known throughout the world. But my guess is that it's largely, at least halfway known in its Spanish version. But Rabassa's translation is just so, I don't know, it just feels effortless. It doesn't feel like a translation.
That's when you know. Which it's hard. Like I've had more conversations for this podcast that translation has come up in the last few months than I had in the years prior, which has been great. And just talking about how important translation is and how much more there is to it than people can realize. Right. So the fact that it feels effortless is such a great feat, Mm-hmm. But can you tell us a sense of, what's special about this novel? And
well, one of the things is that, to me, it is just the storytelling style, right? Have you ever read it?
No.
It's about this group of people who leave a populated area of it's been a long time since I read it, but at some point in Central or South America, they leave trying to get to the West Coast, and they never get there. And so they, instead of going back, They just found this village that called Macondo, and then that's where they live. And there are these families, and it's this sort of beautiful, we call it magic realism, right? And Garcia Marquez talks about his grandmother, and that's another thing that connects it with Ivan Doig, is that when he started writing this House of Sky, he was just recording some memories, and once he started recording specifically things with his about his grandmother that lived with them, and in her voice, that's when the book really was born.
Whoa,
right?
I love that.
Yeah. So he did that with the grandmother, and then added his father's voice in, and then finally his voice. And it's just amazing. But anyway, Garcia Marquez, same thing with the grandmother. He said his grandmother used to tell him these stories, and they would have all of these sort of fabulous, kind of fantastic elements to them. And he said she never changed her demeanor, which is kind of ultimately the definition of magic realism, is that, magical things happen, or seemingly magical things happen, and nobody blinks an eye, because it's just the way that world is, right? So he took that style and used it for the novel.
That's incredible. I love that.
And
my gosh.
It's got, it's really a beautiful novel. It's got a lot of sort of pseudo history, like a small Central American nation or South American nation. There's the military. I mean, it starts out when I think it starts out with a guy, when he was being hung, he would think this. Many years later, as he faced the firing squad, Colonel Aureliano Buendia was to remember the distant afternoon when his father took him to discover ice. Not this first sentence.
Oh my gosh, what a start. Whew.
The world was so recent that many things lacked names, and in order to indicate them, it was necessary to point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm in on it.
It's fantastic.
I love that style of writing.
Yeah. And the ending is just unbelievable. I won't go there.
Oh, man, I have not read any of them so far.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay.
Like, this is exciting. Okay. Although my anxiety grows because all of you give such damn good book recommendations, and right. I only have so much time.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I try to read every book that authors write that come to City Lights.
Yeah.
Right. And then sometimes it helps when I also interview them for Books on the Bed, but right. I also have to do the Books on the Bed folks. And then you share these, and I'm like overwhelmed because there are so many damn good stories out there.
There are.
And, titles that I hear a lot like this one that I just haven't gotten to. Yeah. But this is why it helps to have someone like that I love what you read. Like, I could tell you were a good reader. Mm-hmm. So when you have that personal recommendation.
Yeah.
It's like, all right. I can dive into this. So this is great. The only one I've read is the next one.
Right.
Which I'm excited to hear you talk about because Zelda Lockhart chose this.
Okay. All right.
In season 1.
This is Leslie Marmon Silko, Ceremony. It's a novel that I use every time I teach mythology and every time I teach Native American literature. I did one time substitute another early, like 1970s novel, maybe Winter in the Blood, for this, but I found myself referencing this through the entire semester, and the students hadn't read it, so I thought, never again will I not have them read Ceremony. But yeah, Ceremony is a powerful piece of work set in the middle of the 20th century. Teo is the main character, who is a Laguna Pueblo individual who lives there. He's a mixed blood young man who is taken in by his aunt and her family. He goes to World War II and has traumatic experiences there, and it's really using the PTSD from the war experience to manifest the PTSD of the indigenous experience. Okay, that's the way I read it, right? So he's accepted into the military. He and his cousin Rocky go into the military together. Rocky ends up very early in the novel. He's dead, and the novel it's difficult for some students to get into initially, but they all find their way into it because initially it's very kind of disjointed. She doesn't use chapters. She uses breaks. There are sections that are mythological in content that are set off like poetry.
See, but I love books that are like not written.
Yeah.
They just, what is a book?
Yeah.
Right? That's a theme that keeps coming up, and I like disjointed.
Yeah.
You don't have to give me organized. Like, is it good or not? You know. Right. But I can understand how students would.
Yeah. And you can, and I give them a timeline because you can suss out the timeline.
Yeah.
As you're reading it. Eventually, when is the Bataan Death March and these various things that sort of identify the time that a certain thing's happening. But he is Teo and his group of friends and frenemies and enemies. They come back from the war, and where the military uniform has been a kind of acceptable skin for them, right? And has gotten a lot of support. Thank you for your service, that kind of thing that we hear. As soon as that uniform is off, they are just dirty Indians again.
Yep.
Right. And so this is Teo's. The ceremony is Teo's. He's sick, right? So he's got sort of mental issues from the trauma. He is and they manifest as a physical sickness. And so finally he goes to a medicine man who is sort of outside the traditions of the Laguna Pueblo or the Navajo medicine. Somebody who has updated. A lot of times we have these days, I think that speaks to us today in that a lot of times people want to go back to some time when things were or they don't like things to change, right? But Bione, the medicine man, he understands that for the ceremonies to work, they have to evolve like the life has evolved, and so Teo goes to Batoni and goes through a ceremony that ultimately is not completed until he rejects the violence expected of him by the U.S. culture. He has to let go those kinds of expectations of an eye for an eye, those sorts of things, and he has to find his own center. And it's that journey for him throughout the novel. And there's a parallel journey, a mythological journey of Fly and Sparrow, I think, trying to the storm clouds have been stolen. There's a drought going on in Teo's world, but the storm clouds have been stolen in the mythological world. Yeah. And Fly and Hummingbird, it's not Sparrow. Fly and Hummingbird have to go through a series of adventures to recover the storm clouds.
Yeah.
Right.
And I love those dual stories.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's what makes it. I mean, it could be good without it, but there's just something about that symbolic journey to help understand the human journey.
And he just has to figure out how to, there's also a symbolic journey taking place in his life in that he has to recover the cattle that belonged to his uncle, that the cattle that were lost. And so it's a journey that he's going through during which he comes face to face with what is just called the lie. So he finds the cattle on a white man's land, and his immediate thought is, well, this white man got tricked by some brown-skinned person to buy these stolen cattle, never thinking that the white man might have stolen them.
There it is.
Because why would they? White people have all the money, right? And so he recognizes the lie, and then he has to kind of combat that, and that it's transcending the lie is ultimately his healing.
Gosh, this is such a fantastic book to teach. I would love to be in this class with you. I wish I could audit it, you know?
Yeah. It's a wonderful, wonderful novel. Just so rich.
I'm so glad this got brought back around, you know, to remind people.
Yeah.
Because, it's definitely syllabus worthy. I'm glad you kept it on in perpetuity, because you can't replace it. It's too good.
No, you really can't. And, you know, one of the things I regret, Matt, is that when I was at Western I think it was during my time as master's student, but it might have been after the South Carolina experience when I was ABD, and I was teaching at Western on a visiting lectureship or something like that. Leslie Marmon Silko came to Cullowhee, to campus. I wish I had been aware of who she was and what she was. But I remember being at one of her presentations, and I just wish I had known what I was hearing, what I was missing by not knowing.
Yeah, it's interesting to look back at those situations where you're like, man, had I known, this would have been awesome. But, you know, hey, it's okay.
Yeah, and one of the things that's foreign in here, I think, for students, we live in such a patriarchal society, and the Laguna Pueblo people are matriarchal or matrilineal, right? So everything descends through the mother's line. So what's interesting about, you know, his uncle, in that society, a boy's most important male role model, male figure, is the maternal uncle, not the father. So Rocky's father is there, Robert is there, but he's somebody else's. He's his sister's, you know, right, main male role model. But Uncle Josiah, I think it is, his mother's the mother's brother is the one, and so he dies while Teo is gone to the war, and so the loss of this male figure, the loss of the cousin Rocky, the loss of, you know, the trauma of mechanized death, right, in war, all of this, you know, really has him very sick at the beginning of the novel, and then it unfolds slowly but beautifully throughout.
Yeah, it truly is one of the most powerful books I've read. Yeah, and I love it. So thank you for sharing all of that, and lucky students for sure that get to read it. And they look at it kind of with raised eyebrows initially, but many of them will say, this is the best thing I've ever read. Yeah, that's incredible. What a gift to give young people. What's number 6?
Number 6.
Was not ready for this.
Oh, yeah. This is, so Streets of Nashville, I wanted to write a crime novel. Okay. And for a couple of reasons, you know, the murder that opens the novel was something that actually happened while I lived there. And I always had it in the back of my mind and thought I'd write something about it one day. But, you know, I had Gabriel's Songbook and a Twilight Reel to write. And then I thought, you know, I'm going to do this. And James Lee Burke, he's an amazing author, I think. You know, someone who can tell an exciting and often violent story, but in just rich, beautiful language, complicated characters. So he has been, you know, if I was going to write a crime novel, I wanted to try to write something that was, you know, worthy of Burke's inspiration. Wow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a good guide.
Yeah. This particular novel that I have is an old library book from somewhere.
I was going to say.
But it's a 1994 Dixie City Jam, and the only reason I got it was I brought it here to the bed, the table, is that it was the first Burke that I read. So this was my introduction to him. It wasn't his first novel, of course, but this was the first thing of his that I read.
Do you remember when you read this?
It was after I was here. So it was sometime probably in the early 2000s.
Okay.
Because I came here to ETSU in August of 2001. So probably within the first 3 or 4 years, I had picked this up probably at McKay's or somewhere like that. And I don't remember how I learned about him, but man, I've read a lot of his stuff since then. But I brought this one simply because it was the first one, and it's a great story. It's got a sort of psychopath that I had sort of forgotten, Will Buchholz, I think, who gives me the creeps the way I would like for Hugo Rogers to give people creeps.
Yeah, that's so interesting to see that connection.
Yeah. And then, as it turns out, I didn't remember this until I reread it just a couple of weeks ago. I didn't remember it, but there's a Hugo character in here who's not the main psychopath, but he's bad enough. But I had forgotten about that.
Whoa. Man. Yeah, and like it's interesting because writing a story that's different than what you've done before can be intimidating. Like even if you've written good books, which you had, you're like, well, this is a very different thing. Who should I look to? You know, like where can I go to feel more like, all right, I can do this.
Yeah. So, I mean, he writes in first person. His Robichaud novels are all in first person. But then there's other novels, the Holland series. There's one that I really love called Rain Gods. That I'm pretty sure the Holland novels are in third person. But I don't know. I'd have to look at them again. But this was my sort of my guiding star in writing Streets of Nashville. And one of the things that happened was, like I said, in sort of laying out my career earlier, was that basically both Gabriel's Songbook and a Twilight Reel were 25 years from starting to write them to publication.
That's amazing. To think about.
Yeah. So I started writing Gabriel's Songbook probably in 1992.
Whoa.
And published it in 2017. Started Twilight Reel while I was at Western, 93 to 95 in there, 94 probably, published in 2021. Right? So I thought, if I'm going to get another novel out of this life, I need to pick up the pace a little bit here. So
maybe not wait a quarter century to get it out.
Yeah, no more. I don't have another quarter century. So
but did it feel like kind of writing a crime story was like a good jolt, right, to help you?
Yeah, and it was fun, and I watch a lot of British crime series.
You do? Yeah. Me too.
And so some people have said who've read Streets of Nashville say, really, the police part of this, the investigative parts, seem really real. They seem like they work. I think was partially that, and partially because I had a guy, a friend who's a detective with the Nashville Metro Police.
Oh wow!
So I could bounce things. I could just text him and say, "Hey Bob, what about this?"
What a great source!
Yeah, really, it was wonderful. But in this would have been May of 23, I think. I had started Streets of Nashville sometime, I think, in the summer of 21, 22, and in May, I think it was 23. It might have been 22. Anyway, in May, let's say I had about 30,000 words on Streets of Nashville. And I was at my older grandchild's graduation in Durham, and I was watching Wiley Cash interview James Lee Burke.
Whoa!
When Burke's 40th novel had just come out, right? And Cash, I remember Cash asked him. I mean, and Burke is at this point. I mean, he's already. He's in his late 80s now. So this was 90. He was 85 or 84, something like that. And Cash asked him, "How do you do that? How do you write that many novels?" And Burke said, "Oh, well, I get up every day, 364 days a year, every day except Christmas, and I write 750 words." And he said, by the time you do that every day for a year, you've got a novel. So he said he just wakes up with a scene in mind, or he knows what the next scene's going to be. He writes it, at least 750 words, and then he's, whatever the rest of the day holds, does that the next day and the next day and the next. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try that. So I started right then and writing 750 words a day for that summer. And by the time, I think I started right around 30 or 40,000 words. And by the time I hit mid-July, I had right around 90,000 words.
How about that?
Yeah.
He was right.
So he was right. And I haven't been able to do that exactly since then, but I have. Avalon Moon came along sort of in that a bit of that same pace.
Yeah.
So,
that consistency is unreal.
Yeah.
But it's a good lesson to learn,
It is.
And it just, sometimes it's those small nuggets that you're like, let's give it a shot. And it ends up being really helpful to bring you into a new cycle of writing.
It certainly worked for Streets, and it has been very effective when I can apply it, since then. So.
I'm really excited about Avalon Moon now. And we were just talking last night, too, about the way the moon hits the French Broad River from Stackhouse.
Yeah.
Like their porch is, that's one of the best views ever. And then I was telling them how you have Avalon Moon coming out. And I was just like thinking about, oh, man, what's the story going to be like? And the moon was recently so beautiful.
Yeah.
And so big.
It was full just a few days ago.
And
a few nights ago.
I have this window in between the trees from my porch that the moon is always directly in the middle of.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
Cool.
Like, how did I luck out?
Yeah.
And the moon's one of my favorite things on earth. So, in fact, Esau Arsen in Texas, my the first novel I read of hers, Shoot the Moon, was like, like there's just a theme coming here. So, like, when I found out you were writing that, I was really excited. And, it's cool to hear writers keep growing and trying new things. And seeing where it goes.
I was going to say a while ago, this is just a quick story. But, when I finished, you were asking about writing a crime story. When I knew I wanted to write a crime story, but when I finished Streets of Nashville, I thought, well, what have I done? What is this?
Yeah.
I said, it's not a mystery because you know who does it from early on. So what is it? And I actually went on the internet and started looking at definitions, and I ran across a definition for suspense, and that sounds exactly like it.
Yeah.
So I just called it a suspense novel because I love that. The reader knows. The definition that I saw, at least, the reader knows things that the character doesn't know, and so the suspense comes in: is the character going to figure it out? Is the character going to survive?
Yeah. That's a much better term for it.
Fits.
But I just love that question. What have I done?
Yeah, what have I done? And then the Kirkus Review called it a thriller, and I thought, I hadn't thought about that, but okay.
I like suspense.
I like suspense better, too.
And I think it is suspenseful. Yeah. So, it fits the definition.
Yeah.
This is exactly why I came to see you.
Oh, good.
What a diverse powerhouse stack of 6 books this is. If I saw this on the bed, I would be super stoked. It's just a delight to hear your perspectives on these and the ways they've shaped your life. That's one of the fun things about this is obviously I love all of the author's work that I talk with, right? But you're not you without what you've read and the music you've played. And so it's fun to see these things and how they've weaved into your life and affected you and helped you write your own books. But speaking of Avalon Moon, and one person that we haven't included in this stack, which I didn't know if you would or not with Hawthorne, but there is something that was in your blog that I thought...
I caught a glimpse of that a while ago.
Maybe we could end with?
Sure.
Because... then we can kind of include Hawthorne through this.
He is my favorite.
I know you love Hawthorne.
The Scarlet Letter, all the tales, and the House of the Seven Gables. Love them all.
I'm trying to find where I put that other sheet. Oh, is it on there?
Is it part of this? It is part of this.
Okay.
Part of the Genesis Road.
Can you describe where this passage comes from?
This passage actually comes from the Custom House sketch that is the beginning of Scarlet Letter, right? So the frame that Hawthorne puts at the beginning of the Scarlet Letter is that the customs inspector there in Salem, the port in Massachusetts, it's a first-person narrator, and Hawthorne did this job. He lost it politically, but when the Democrats were in power, he was appointed the customs person, and so in the Custom House sketch, he basically writes about, it's very funny. He's just writing about the job. And then eventually at the end of it, he gets to downtime. He went up in the attic in the Custom House and he finds this roll of writing, wrapped in a cloth, and he unrolls the cloth and it's a red A, a cloth A that's tattered and everything, and it's around this manuscript. And so it's the basic story of the Scarlet Letter. And so he's going to get fired from the Custom House, and so this is what he's going to do. He's going to write this. He's going to take what's there and write a story out of it. And so this is part of his musing about how do you write a story that lives in the past, so he's writing this in late 1840s, but the setting is early 1600s, so how do you write a story that lives in that past and makes that past come to life? So this is one of the things that Hawthorne writes, and it's about, I think it's a sort of in part, his statement about what is Gothic. So as you hinted, it begins with moonlight. Moonlight in a familiar room, falling so white upon the carpet and showing all its figures so distinctly, making every object so minutely visible, yet so unlike a morning or noontide visibility, is a medium the most suitable for a romance writer to get acquainted with his elusive guests. There is the little domestic scenery of the well-known apartment, the chairs, with each its separate individuality, the center table sustaining a work basket, a volume or two, and an extinguished lamp, the sofa, the bookcase, the picture on the wall. All these details, so completely seen, are so spiritualized by the unusual light that they seem to lose their actual substance and become things of intellect. Nothing is too small or too trifling to undergo this change and acquire dignity thereby. A child's shoe, the doll seated in her little wicker carriage, the hobby horse, whatever in a word has been used or played with during the day is now invested with a quality of strangeness and remoteness, though still almost as vividly present as by daylight. Thus, therefore, the floor of our familiar room has become a neutral territory, somewhere between the real world and fairyland, where the actual and the imaginary may meet and each imbue itself with the nature of the other. Ghosts might enter here without affrighting us. It would be too much in keeping with the scene to excite surprise were we to look about us and discover a form beloved, but gone hence, now sitting quietly in a streak of this magic moonshine with an aspect that would make us doubt whether it had returned from afar or had never once stirred from our fireside. The somewhat dim coal fire has an essential influence in producing the effect which I would describe. It throws its unobtrusive tinge throughout the room with a faint ruddiness upon the walls and ceiling and a reflected gleam from the polish of the furniture. This warmer light mingles itself with the cold spirituality of the moonbeams and communicates, as it were, a heart and sensibilities of human tenderness to the forms which fancy summons up. It converts them from snow images into men and women. Glancing at the looking-glass, we behold, deep within its haunted verge, the smoldering glow of the half-extinguished anthracite, the white moonbeams on the floor, and a repetition of all the gleam and shadow of the picture with one remove further from the actual and nearer to the imaginative. Then, at such an hour, with this scene before him, if a man sitting alone cannot dream strange things and make them look like truth, he need never try to write romances.
So good.